This is the Lighting Fires podcast, supported by Henley Business School.
I don't want to be the centre of attention, but I want to make sure that I'm doing the best thing for, my community, for my team, and for fundamentally the people around me. And maybe part of that is some of them won't like me.
Yeah.
But if I focus too much on people liking me, I lose much more than I have.
Welcome to the Lighting Fires podcast. It is a chilly but bright morning here, and I have been listening back to this latest episode with Lucy Guest, who is a social media extraordinaire, and we conducted our coaching work together a little while ago now, and it was really great to listen back to the conversation with her. And on this episode, we talk about her journey into management and into becoming an authentic leader. It's something that comes up a lot in my coaching work, and this is about bringing your passion into your work so that you feel like you can achieve something great with the people around you. It's about dealing with mistakes and helping you to feel equipped to do that, dealing with power dynamics in the workplace, and building confidence and gaining new perspectives on situations. We also hear about why she loves social media. We talk everything from sharks, Dungeons and Dragons, Shakespeare, and even some Old Norse. So I really hope you enjoy this episode and you gain something useful from it. So Lucy, welcome.
Hello.
To the Lighting Fires podcast. It's lovely to have you here today.
Thank you for having me. Yeah, it's good.
So this is actually only the second time we've met in real life, isn't it?
Yeah, we've been very much online friends for quite a while.
But it works, so that's fine. So I'm going to start by just asking you, could you introduce yourself, please?
Absolutely. I am a social media strategist and brand communication specialist. I have been working mostly in and around the education sector, but focusing on Gen Z and millennial audiences for the past 10 years, really working to build organic online communities, create connections, and most importantly, just build reputations online. So for me, the big thing is, how can we tell a really interesting story in a way that makes people feel seen and heard? But are they telling a friend? How is that story then moving through the world? Where is the social part of that media? So yeah, I do that.
Awesome. Thank you. Sounds fascinating.
I mean, I think it is. One of the things that makes me keep coming back to social media time and time again is that it is such a fantastic balancing act between creativity and data science. You don't see that play out in anywhere near the same kind of landscape or at the same pace in any other kind of channel set, as far as I'm concerned. And I think it's just wonderful to have that opportunity and to always constantly be looking to evolve. If you look at the way that even on TikTok, we were posting 2 years ago, well, the functionality's moved on. TikTok shop is so much bigger, search is so much bigger, and you have new things like being able to post photo carousels. So that means that we have to constantly be looking at analysing and seeing how we can level up, because fundamentally, most people aren't on the internet to speak to companies and brands. They're on the internet to, catch up on what their friends are doing, watch a funny video from their favourite creator, to learn a bit more about the world. And as an organisation, as a social media team, it's our job to fit into that landscape rather than make people feel, uncomfortable. Sometimes when you're being sold to, you really do feel a bit uncomfortable. But fundamentally, to make them feel like we understand them, because that's so much of what marketing is, that behavioural science, understanding your your key markets, your audiences, and who you want to be talking to.
Yes, thank you. So let's hear a little bit about your backstory before we met, because I think it's really interesting, and we do share a love of history, don't we?
We do, yes. So I came into marketing a slightly different route to most people. So I don't have a degree in marketing. My undergraduate degree is in ancient medieval history, and my master's degree is in medieval studies. In terms of my academic interests, I'm very interested in the history of belief, of identities, and how that then impacts actions, behaviours, and decision making. So I think that's probably where I connect with it, is that for me, everything that we do in our lives is a kind of story. And how we tell marketing stories to influence behaviour is a direct link to how we tell stories about our own world, about how people told stories about their world in the past. You know, if we think about how people talk about money, that changes through societies based on the stories we tell. If you think about how we think about Vikings always looking for gold, is it that they were always looking for gold, or it's the stories that we have are written by the people they took the gold from? How does that work? So for me, I very much came into marketing looking for interesting stories to tell. And I was very lucky to finish my undergrad and land a job at the University of Birmingham with some really fantastic people and learn a lot from them. Yeah. I kind of came to coaching when I started a job at the University of Warwick. I was moving up from being an individual contributor into really my first proper management role. So I'd done part-time management of content creators before that, but suddenly I had a team of 6 full-time staff who were brilliant in their own ways and needed different support needs. And I wanted to make sure that I could lead them, I could advocate for them, but most importantly, I could do that whilst being myself and really thinking about what does an authentic leadership style look like for me, and how could I communicate that upwards to the people I wanted to influence on behalf of my team, but also to my team themselves. And what did leadership really look like? Because that's the real thing, isn't it? I know listeners, you know, spoiler alert, a lot of what we worked on was this sense of identity and what does authenticity look like. So yeah, that was kind of where we were at when we came to coaching.
Yeah. And I think, you know, there are a lot of myths around leadership and what a good leader looks like. And not that many people do that exploration, or that they don't realise they need to, they're not encouraged to. So it was really fascinating for me to work with somebody at that point in your career where you were really interested to do that. And we had a lot of fun with it, didn't we?
We did, yes. The constellations exercise with a lot of random things from around around my office space was interesting.
So we'll get onto that in a moment. But I think because we both enjoy creative thinking, we were able to bring slightly different approaches to the work. If you're listening to this and you're interested in training as a coach, I can highly recommend the Professional Certificate in Executive Coaching, or even the Masters at Henley Business School. It is the best investment I have made in myself and my business. The course is led by research, so you know it has academic rigour, and the tools and techniques you learn are highly practical. You get the opportunities to practice, you build confidence. I also gained friendships for life, a community that's continued to support me. I can highly recommend it. So if you decide to take the plunge and contact Henley about the certificate programme, do mention the Lighting Fires podcast. Talk to me then about what happened during the coaching that was useful or created shifts for you, or maybe gave you one of those aha moments.
I think there were some really important, I guess, perspective shifts for me. Obviously, the way that we started out coaching was by doing Myers-Briggs and seeing how I came out in that, and what we found from that, which wasn't really surprising to me, but is surprising to a lot of people who meet me, is I'm very strongly introverted and I am used to a lot of thoughts bouncing around in my head. And that sometimes means that I think the first big takeaway for me was having someone to bounce those thoughts off of, which gave me an opportunity to see things from a different angle, to see where were my biases playing into things, but also where was I maybe being a bit too harsh on myself and my own actions, and seeing one of the really big eye-openers I think I came away with as middle management. You don't necessarily have the most control in the world, and how do you accept that, and how do you communicate that to your team whilst also balancing their perceptions of you and higher ups is really difficult. So I think that was the first one, was having someone else to talk it through, but also realising that I needed to get out of that loop of just being in my own head all the time. I think one of the other really big ones, and I come back to this fairly regularly and I talk to a lot of other people about it, was we did a piece around navigating office influencing, and you sent me a very helpful article about sharks, which for me, I am aware that I have a very much I want to get the job done. I want to do the best work I can. And it's not about me being necessarily seen as the architect of that work. I want to give credit where credit's due to other people. And coming up against different styles in management, I don't think I was fully prepared for how some people engage in different power dynamics.
Yeah.
I don't want to use the word office politics because I think that doesn't feel very... It gives me the ick. But part of it is how do you respond to those in a way that, for me, feels that I'm not getting involved in a way that makes me uncomfortable, but also I'm doing my best to protect my team's interests and the needs of, in my case, my online community, whilst also trying to get the resources that we need to support us. So that was really eye-opening for me.
So I think, politics comes up a lot in my coaching work because whether we like it or not, it exists in every organisation. Yeah. Every organisation is a system, and there's all sorts of stuff going on in that system depending on all the individuals in there and their agendas and the history that's gone on before them. And so we definitely did a number of things relating to that. We looked at different conflict models and conflict styles. We looked at different ways that people can be political and what to be aware of. So there's a really nice model which uses animals to summarise the different types of people you come across, whether you're looking at the kind of fox or an owl or a donkey. I personally find that really useful, and I wish I had known about it when I was in a corporate position, because I was in a senior role at a really young age, and trying to learn to navigate that stuff is tricky. And the piece about sharks, this is one of my favourite things. So when I was studying at Henley Business School to be a coach, we had a visiting tutor called Pete Mann, and he came along and he shared a number of models and techniques with us, but he shared this essay. So would you like to say a little bit about it?
This is the bit where I get tested on how much I remember, isn't it?
It's not a test. It's not a test.
Part of it is, and for context, I am aware that I'm a very direct communicator. When you are trained to a certain extent to communicate in very complex ideas in 280 characters or less, you get quite direct. So for me, I will tell people what I think, obviously in as kind and empathetic a way as I can. So the shark essay was really interesting because it was talking about how if you are essentially swimming in the sea, I assume. I don't know many freshwater sharks. Maybe I should go and research that later. But if you're swimming in the sea with a pack of sharks, you might want to consider mirroring their behaviour, even if you're a dolphin. And when, you might be having a difficult day or you are struggling with something, what you don't want to do is let the sharks see you bleed, because as soon as they start seeing the blood in the water, you trigger a feeding frenzy. So it's how do you match the culture of the organisation you're in, How do you understand the communication preferences of the people around you, if they are maybe less direct than you are used to in my case, but also maybe if they're more direct for other people. But also, how do you have almost that kind of step back from emotions and think about the image you're projecting to them? Because part of it is that as an individual contributor, that passion is really valued. It's really important. But when you step into some of those management conversations, how do you make that passion seem like it's expertise rather than inexperience? Particularly, as you said, you know, I started that job when I was 29, and I like to think I did a good job. I'm sure you will find people who disagree because they're entitled to their opinion. You know, that's life. But yeah, it was about how do I understand that organisation's culture and see how that fits in for me, whilst also me moving forward for my team within it.
So I should say that this Swimming with Sharks paper is something a bit mystical about it. So it's seemingly written for a biology and medical journal, and there are notes saying that there's little known about the author. Perhaps they're a descendant of Voltaire or Jacques Cousteau, and obviously it's designed to be an allegory. But I think the people that I've shared it with usually find it really useful to have that metaphor in their heads when they're dealing with politics, because we can't be naive to politics. You can't not get involved because life is political. So it seems to equip people with a bit of perspective and insight that they didn't have before.
Yeah. And it's also, I mean, the best stories allow you to draw your own conclusions because then you mirror them onto your own experience. Yes. And I think that's very much one of them. There's a lot of subtext missing that you could probably give it to lots of people in different circumstances and they'd pull something really great from it. But yeah, for me, it was about how to communicate better and to a certain extent, how to manage my stressful moments without maybe them seeming as stressful.
Yes.
Which maybe is more about being a swan than a shark, but, you know.
Yeah, because we talked quite a lot about responding and not reacting to situations, didn't we?
Yeah, yeah. And how could I create that distance so that I could come up with a more measured response? Because particularly in social media, you move very fast, you move at a real pace, and not everyone is used to that. And how can you create that distance when I'm feeling a real sense of urgency and someone else isn't? Or if vice versa, I'm dealing with loads of urgent stuff and something that's, you know, a month away is creating quite a lot of pressure. How do you balance those out whilst also trying hard not to kind of let that impact your team? Because that was one of the other things we talked about. How do I get out of that protector mode for my team and allow them the opportunity to do amazing work, but also the opportunity to make mistakes so that they can learn from them in the way that I've been allowed to? Because, you know, you do these things with really good intentions, but sometimes the best of intentions don't create the best of actions.
So what do you think helped you shift that perspective a little bit?
I think part of that is acknowledging that I can't do everything. I think the other thing was having some of the feedback from the people I managed. I did 2 rounds of 360 feedback while I was in that job, which, as I'm sure anyone who's done 360 feedback will say, there are some things that are really helpful, but it allows you to see the truth quite clearly, even if that is a truth you maybe weren't quite prepared for. So there's partially that. I think we also had an extended conversation in one of our sessions about, am I actually trying to protect my team, or am I trying to protect a past version of myself who maybe didn't feel as supported due to circumstances outside of my control? Some of it is also, how do you deal with your own past experiences? You know, I think that's, and that could be said for personal life as well as professional, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's how do you stop looking through the lens of your own experiences and start thinking about, well, what does the person in front of me want and need? Because those are 2 different things, wanting and needing. And how can I encourage them to feel like they can trust me to tell me what they need as well as what they want? And that's very much easier said than done. I don't claim to have never made mistakes as a manager, or I've always been successful at that. But yeah, trying your best.
Yeah. And we're bound to make mistakes as a manager, aren't we? You know, as many books as you might read or TED Talks or podcasts you might listen to, you do just learn by experience, and quite often really challenging situations are thrown at you, and there is no like handbook for dealing with them, and you're a bit dependent on your own kind of personal support network that you may or may not have around you.
Yeah, which was why I think having that coaching relationship where, you know, obviously that's a confidential space where I could share, I don't know what to do here, what are the techniques, what are the exercises where I can maybe explore different options. But I think it's also about, sometimes there is this perception that as a manager you should have all of the answers, and it's having that, I think, self-awareness, but also that confidence, which is, I assume, a word we will get to at some point in this podcast episode, having that confidence to say, yeah, I don't know what to do. Yeah. Can I have some help? Because fundamentally, I think there are always going to be different nuances, different challenges that you might not have met before, or even, you know, someone who comes from a very different kind of thought process. I accept that my brain does work in a way that is very much about, okay, well, how do these pieces of the story fit together? What's the end goal? What's the interesting bit? How do we build that in? And that isn't how everyone's, you know, thought process works. You have some amazing people who are very data driven, very analytical, and some other people who are so creative, they make me look like I'm an amateur. And if we had just one type of person, the world would be a really boring place, and we wouldn't get as much done in the workplace. So thinking about how can you balance the different needs of different personality types, and something as simple as, you know, if you're running a team meeting, how can you make sure that maybe quieter, more introverted colleagues feel they have the opportunity to say their piece, as well as the more confident, extroverted colleagues.
And a really simple technique around that is just giving people time to pause and write down their thoughts, whether it's going up and writing something on a whiteboard or a flip chart, or similarly on a kind of online meeting, or giving people just a moment to write something in their notebooks or on their laptop, whatever. Just that moment for the introverts to do that bit of processing, to figure out what they think so that they can express that before the agenda moves on, is really useful.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's part of it, is having that agenda, having that structure, that organisation, so that you don't just get to the meeting and then people suddenly find out what it's about, because not everyone does their best work on the spot. Yeah. I think very few people do the best work on the spot. I certainly am not one of those people. And I'm always amazed when some people are that person. But it's how do you create that kind of space?
Yeah. Okay, thank you. So you mentioned the word confident.
Yes, it's the big word for me.
So let's talk a little bit about that. So what happened in the coaching, or what was useful, or what shifted, and how did that happen?
I think, so I came into this very much aware of some of the feedback I'd had in previous roles, where I am aware, I cannot hide that I am a very kind of academic personality type, and that's not everyone's cup of tea. But one of those is that I've had the feedback in the past that people don't feel I'm very approachable because I use lots of big words. So then you feel that you have to, or I feel in the past sometimes that I've had to kind of make myself smaller so that I don't come across in ways that people find unapproachable. Because you can have good ideas regardless of the level, regardless of the area of the business, or regardless of someone's background, etc. So I wanted to make sure that people could come to me with ideas, but also how do you do that without straying away from who you are? Because do you know what? I use a lot of long words. I find words and their meanings really interesting. That is that whole... The words we use shape the stories that we tell, shape our perception. And I find it really interesting to, use different ones. And I read 2 medieval languages, which is a bit of a useless fact about me.
What are the names of these languages?
So I can read Latin.
Yeah.
But my Latin is terrible. Anyone, particularly my Latin tutors, will tell you that. But I also read Old Norse, which is medieval Icelandic, which part of doing a master's degree, you have to be able to do the research yourself, which means that I needed to be able to read primary sources in Old Norse, because I know you know this, Julie, for the listeners at home. My master's dissertation was a fourth wave feminist reevaluation of the Ásynja Freyja, which is also referred to as the Norse, the Viking goddess Freyja. So for that, I needed to be able to access things like Snorra Edda in the original medieval Icelandic. So I then can also then compare and contrast the different translations, and does this particular word mean what we think it does?
I am so excited listening to you talk about this.
I can send you a copy of my dissertation if you want. It's I found it very interesting.
I've never heard anybody talk in Old Norse before, and I've also learned Latin at school. Again, wasn't terribly good at it, but it was really useful in helping me understand the English language, and I can read some other languages because of that. And I've always loved words. And I was actually saying to a friend the other day, I don't use my full vocabulary because I feel like I have to sometimes not dumb myself down, but I
dim your light a little bit.
Yeah, and I've been thinking a lot recently about how maybe I've been keeping myself a bit small over the last few years. And actually, I think this podcast is me going a bit bigger again.
I love that for you.
Yes, thank you. So we were talking about words,
yes,
and that came from discussion about confidence.
Yes, because fundamentally, I am aware that confidence is something that I have spent a long time working at. It's very easy when it's technical skills to feel confident, particularly as an individual contributor, because you've got the data to back it up. I can tell you that I am very good at Twitter threads. I've got the data to prove it. I'm very good at using Reddit communities to share information. I've got the data to prove it. It's much harder to have the data to prove that you're good at influencing leadership, you know, kind of managing upwards, or that you are good at building trust, because trust is something you can break very, very easily without meaning to. So it's how do you build those things up? I'm also aware that, you know, I came into this role, as I'm sure we all have, having had my own interesting management experiences. Some managers have been fantastic, others maybe not. And what I was keenly aware of is the manager I didn't want to be. And I think one thing coaching showed me is actually it's not about the manager I don't want to be. What is the best manager I can be? And how can I look at different scenarios and see, okay, well, I could maybe do that differently, but also not get stuck in, again, that introvert thought trap of just constantly ruminating over something. So it's building that confidence where it's much harder to find that data and that evidence that, yes, you've done a good job, big tick, the numbers are in green.
Yeah. So was there something specific that we did together, would you say, that's something others could try? Or
I have to say, I know I kind of very briefly mentioned it earlier, is that constellations exercise.
Let's talk about that, yeah.
I love the constellations exercise. I do it every now and again still by myself, because part of it is that it's really great to get that bird's eye view of a situation, because when you're in a difficult position, it's very easy to feel like I'm under a lot of pressure. How do I get this done? There's all these blockages. I need to build trust with so-and-so. I want so-and-so to understand my point of view. And what Constellations is really good at is zooming you out of that and getting you to think from their point of view. Okay, well, so-and-so has asked me to give them X amount of budget, but I've got all of these different demands and I don't know how we're going to measure that return on investment. And I've got, you know, the finance team asking me why we need to spend so much money. Or, you know, it might be that you're asking your web team to do something while they're in the middle of a big, you know, restructuring of a section of the site, so they don't have the capacity. So you need to think about what's the timing that you give them. So
shall I just explain what a constellation is?
That probably would be helpful.
So for those people who are interested, this comes from the work of John Whittington, who I was lucky enough to do some training with as part of my coaching training. And the idea is that when you're examining a situation and you want a different perspective on it, you can take objects, make a clear space on a table in front of you, and put the objects in a constellation. So I actually have something called my magic box, which I use for this, which is full of toys and little objects or rocks or ribbon or Smurfs or Lego characters, all sorts of stuff. And you lay it out, and you lay it out in a way where it might be individuals, and you'll be thinking about, are they facing one another, or do they have their back to you? And it just gives you a chance to look at that scenario with a completely different, distance and perspective, which is really useful. So it seems weird and wonderful, and you've got to take a bit of a leap of faith to go with it, but you were really up for this.
Yeah. That might be because you do this quite a lot. I play a lot of Dungeons and Dragons, so this is the kind of thing, the theatre of the mind, that we do on a regular basis anyway. So I think when we did it, I ended up using some of the miniatures from my games. A cuddly toy eel, one of my friends had made me.
I remember
based on one of our campaigns. It's wonderful. She's very talented. And some other bits. But it was really interesting to see and actually physically map out what were the blockages, where were the stakeholders maybe missing out. And I needed to think about, okay, well, this is the wider kind of, the word we use in D&D is encounter. So how do we work through that encounter to get to the end goal that we want? So I found that really helpful, because again, it's very easy when you're in a stressed and emotional headspace to not be able to see past your own set of needs.
Yeah.
But it's great to give you that kind of just zoom out, that lens of, okay, well, what do my stakeholders actually need? What are the blockages? Why am I struggling to get through to that particular member of my team? Am I doing something wrong there? Or is there something happening that I know of, but actually isn't anything to do with work that they might need some support with? And can we have a conversation to help them with that? Stuff like that.
So it depersonalises the situation for you.
And it also decenters you as an individual.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That's really interesting.
Yeah. I also accept that I'm not always comfortable with the limelight, which is why I don't do podcasts very often. But it's how do we navigate essentially that, what does that look like from all of the different characters' point of view?
Yeah. So that helped you with your confidence. And I remember our work kind of as it developed. I think initially there was conversations around not reacting, responding, but perhaps having a certain kind of almost some armour or a certain facade. And I felt that over time that shifted to becoming more about being confident in your authentic self and your authentic leadership style.
Yeah, I think that was a really big part of the shift, is instead of feeling like I had to go into a situation presenting in what a manager looked like, I could go in more as me. And part of that was having the support to go into those situations, and when I had mistakes, the space to reflect on them.
Yeah.
But also some of that work of, okay, well, what does approachable look like for me? And what do those values look like? But also just, I think, giving myself the space to just be me. Part of doing that is accepting that not everyone is going to like it, and not everyone is going to value it, and they are completely allowed to do that, which, as a recovering people pleaser, is a really difficult concept. But, it's how do you move through that space as you are. It's nice to feel that people value you for who you are. And that's been a really great lesson for me, not just in the workplace, but in life in general, in moving through as I would rather people dislike me for who I am, rather than feeling like I had to pretend.
Yeah.
You know.
Are you feeling stuck and need some help moving forwards? At Lighting Fires, I work with business leaders, future leaders and their teams to ignite their full leadership potential. Whether you're a business owner or leading in an organisation, we can work together to create a programme tailored to your priorities. Throughout our coaching together, I see my clients' confidence and capabilities grow as they gain a greater understanding of how they work, learn to make quicker decisions, and develop a vision for their role and a plan on how to get there. Through the challenges and the breakthroughs, you'll have me by your side. Get in touch on LinkedIn or email me, julie@lightingfires.co.uk. So I wanted to talk with you about something we discussed in the coaching sessions, which was in relation to two potential personas that you could be switching in and out of when dealing with some difficult situations. So with your beautiful creative hat on, you named these two personas as Prospero and Ophelia. Prospero being one of the main characters from The Tempest, and Ophelia from the play Hamlet.
Yes, because part of it is that Ophelia is very passive. She lets things happen to her. And she's almost held up as this mirror, this device for the story moving through, rather than an individual in her own right. Whereas Prospero has all of this power. He theoretically has everything he wants. And what he's doing is using that power to help other people, even though they still think of him as, well, they don't like him. There's no one in the whole of Hamlet who looks at Ophelia and has anything negative about her. But at the same time, what is she actually doing to help herself?
Yeah.
And it's almost that, yes, I could have people like me, but actually, am I just abandoning myself?
You're losing your sense of agency.
Losing your sense of agency, losing your sense of power, losing your sense of identity as well, because part of the thing for me when I look at a character like Ophelia is she loses all sense of who she is, and then because she's so focused on others, that's the tragedy of her character for me. It's not, the whole love is lost thing. It's that she gets so wrapped up in that love, she doesn't know who she is anymore. And then you look at Prospero, who has all of this power and owns it. And you know what? People don't always like him. His intentions aren't always read. It's based on the outcomes. And he, in his own ways, has tragedy as a character. That probably says a lot about me if I'm choosing tragic characters from the Shakespearean corpus.
We are looking at the tragedy specifically at this point.
It's fine. We'll go back to the D&D chaos later on. That's much more fun. But part of that is he's accepted that, but his focus is on the outcomes for the people around him, the impact he wants to create, the goals he wants to achieve. And obviously neither of those are in a business setting, but those are talking about relationships and people, and how do you set people up for success or failure. Because when you look at Prospero's character, he fundamentally wants his daughter to be happy and to be fulfilled, even if he is not in her life anymore. And I think that, for me, plays into the way that I think about, I don't want to be the centre of attention, but I want to make sure that I'm doing the best thing for, my community. And maybe part of that is some of them won't like me.
Yeah.
But if I focus too much on people liking me, I lose much more than I have.
I love that. Thank you for sharing that. So I think at this point in the interview, I'm going to ask you to pick out one of my special questions.
This is where we find out one of my values is I'm not great with surprises.
I'm discovering that about quite a lot of the people I interview.
Can you think of a metaphor to describe the before and after, or the coaching experience itself? I think, for me, one of the ways you could think about it is that kind of like cocoon space. It's almost like you're starting off as this little chubby little caterpillar with all your legs. And then the coaching space is that confidential, that almost safe space to talk about what you're going through, where essentially you turn into soup. It's yeah, sorry. This is one of the things.
Horrible visual now.
This is one of the things Julie has learnt about me. I really enjoy just finding out how things work, and you just don't think about what happens in the cocoon very often. If you want to edit that out, I'm okay with it.
No, I love the Lucy soup.
But being in that soup, because part of it is being comfortable with the fact that you are going through change, that you might not look and feel the same when you come out of it, but also that it can be a really difficult space to be in, because owning up to the fact that you've done something that you regret, or you've made a mistake, or you should have handled something differently, that's something that is difficult, and you can have difficult emotions, but I think it's really important to do that, because, you know, as I have said, I absolutely have made mistakes, and I will probably make more mistakes as I move forward. That doesn't mean that I don't need to look at those. I need to absolutely look at those mistakes and think, okay, where did I go wrong there? So I don't make the same mistake in the future. Yeah. You know, it's having that real opportunity to look in the mirror so that you can then emerge as this beautiful butterfly who hopefully will go off and fly away and do exciting things.
Yeah.
Before starting the cycle all over again.
I really like that metaphor. And the fact is, we're all human. We're all going to make mistakes.
Absolutely.
You know, we often only see people's successes, don't we? Especially on social media.
Yeah, I mean, I did get called a LinkedIn thought leader last week. So, but this is the thing, you know, for me, one of the things I have taken away, it's really important for me to be as open about where I feel I have not done what I wanted to achieve. Because it might be there's someone, you know, not even in my conversation, at the next table over in a networking group or whatever, who's going through that situation, and maybe they can learn from my mistakes and do better than me. Because fundamentally, one of the other great lessons you always learn from social media is there's going to be someone else who has a team that moves faster, has better ideas, has more resource, or just sees something and does amazing stuff with it. You're never going to have all of the ideas in the world. And being really comfortable with the fact that someone else is going to be better at you than at different things. And I would rather be an example of, I did this was not what I intended, but this is what came out of it. Because I have the background in the history of belief, I've done a lot of work into looking into different ethical codes, things like that. And for me, I try to very much think about what is the best outcome for the most amount of people. But part of this is you can go into a situation with good intentions and not have a great outcome. And that's really difficult to sit with sometimes, which is important. That's why you should sit with it, to go, okay, I had the right intentions. Did I have the right tools? Did I have the right framework? Did I make sure when I sent an email invite to a difficult meeting that I'd said, this is what the agenda is, please come prepared with this? Or did I just say, we need to talk? Because no one likes a text message or a Teams message or an email that just says, we need to talk. Because, of course, that's going to send you into some kind of anxious overdrive of, oh, my God, what's going on?
Yeah, the phrase, can I have a word with you?
Yeah. Are you free for a call? Or the worst one for me is when someone just calls you, because then I'm like, what's going on?
That's interesting, because I do just call people, but I think that might be the generation that I'm in compared to yours.
I think that is maybe, because it's really interesting, is that when I've had some managers from Gen X particularly will just call me, and for them it's not an issue. And me then saying, okay, could you just let me know what it's about, or just check that I'm free to chat about X, because otherwise I'm sitting there having like a, oh my God, am I about to be fired kind of like worry, which is quite common for millennials like me. It helps to manage that, but also how can I help other people through that space? And that might just be something as simple as, I need to talk to you about something, it's good news.
Yeah,
that's always helpful. Or trying to be really clear about, this is going to be a difficult conversation. It's not good news, but what I want to do is see what outcome we can get that is the best for everyone involved. Which obviously you have to sit through some difficult conversations, and some of those you come out, you feel absolutely pants.
Yeah.
And that's just life.
They're just part of working life, aren't they?
And that's the thing about being part of being confident in your skills as a manager, is knowing, yes, this is going to be a difficult conversation, not shying away from it, and trying to hold the space for whatever the other person is feeling, not anticipating what they're feeling, but sitting there and allowing them to do that, and then moving forward. Business is not always nice. And I can absolutely, as a person, really regret that and feel terrible for them. But me feeling bad is not going to change their situation. No. It's not going to make them feel better. So the least I can do is hold space for them and allow them to have an opportunity to share how they're feeling.
And be resourced yourself rather than exhausted with feeling bad about them, so that you can then move forward together. Thank you. So as we come to the end of this conversation, is there anything more that you wanted to talk about relating to coaching that we haven't covered?
I think for me, one of the things I found really useful is just having a non-judgmental space where I can go, I think I made a bit of a mistake. This is what I did. What techniques, what can I do differently in future? Because one of my real concerns coming into it was, what if I go into a coaching situation, it makes the politics worse? Or what, you get into that, very much that space of, oh no, what if I say the wrong thing to the wrong person? But having that space was really helpful for me, just where I could work through it with someone else. But I think it's been really helpful. I can't recommend it highly enough. So
great. Thank you very much, Lucy. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you for having me.
So as I reflect back on this episode, some of the key takeaways for me is firstly learning from our mistakes. We're all going to make them. We're going to carry on making them for the rest of our lives. So that's just human, that's normal. But the thing that's going to set you apart as a leader or somebody who's going to really achieve something amazing is being able to take those mistakes and look at them and understand that failure is normal, and really understand, so what happened in that situation? What did I miss? What took place? What could I do differently next time? I think that is one of the keys to success. I also think there's a lot in here about being liked and being needed to be liked. And actually, if you can have a clear sense of what you want to achieve in a role or in your business, that's perhaps more important, to feel really connected to that bigger picture and what you want to achieve, because you can't always be liked. It's just not possible. But perhaps you can care a little bit less about that if you know that you're still going to be achieving something great. So I think that can be really helpful to allow you to let go of some of your armour and be yourself, and know that you just don't always need to be liked. So I hope this episode was useful for you, and I look forward to seeing you again in our next episode of the Lighting Fires podcast. If you'd like to find out how we could work together, you can visit my website, www.lightingfires.co.uk, email me at julie@lightingfires.co.uk, or contact me on LinkedIn, Julie Williams, MSc. If you found this podcast helpful, please leave a 5-star rating so others just like you can find me and benefit from these stories.